Okay, hello, good morning, good day, good evening, whoever you may be. So nice for you to join us. Looks like we already have some hellos from Richard. Just give it a few moments, see people joining us as we're just starting. Hello to Karuna. To Michael, good morning. Hello to Maria and Rebecca and Bhumika. Good morning to all of you. And Nico, I hope that you're all doing well. And Sud, also, good morning. Okay. So today I'll be sharing both with you the Angulimala Sutta and some of my own experiences, trying to connect the dhamma to our everyday life. Hello to Madeline from the UK. Afternoon. Yes, thank you for joining us. So the title of today's talk is the Meeting Modern Day Angulimalas. It's a bit dramatic of a title, but I think it serves a purpose of what I want to do, to catch your attention. Hello to Manal. So something, unexpected that I didn't think I was going to be doing much of when I became a monk was having a lot of interactions with gang members. That's not one of the things that I thought was going to be happening. Um, but somehow it turned out that way. And I've had some pretty interesting accounts with these gang members, and I'll share maybe one or two with you after I read the sutta. But growing up in LA, there's this great fear that you're taught about gang members, right? That they're bad people, that um, they do a lot of violence, and all these kinds of things that you're taught to fear these gang members. And we don't really have bandits anymore. So like modern day gang members are like the bandits during the time of the Buddha. And yes, they would break into people's houses, and there would be shootouts and drive-bys. And I had many family members who were part of gangs, and knew some people who passed away due to gang violence. And I myself, was harassed and even chased and held at gunpoint a few times by some gang members uh, growing up. So then I had, when I was very young, I had this sense of fear of them. Right, they were the boogeyman, and everyone would talk bad about them. Um, but at the same time, some of them were my cousins and my friends and the neighbors, right? So it was a complicated relationship to see them as like the other or the enemy at the same time, but at the same time know who they are as persons, right? And that they're just regular people. And then as I got older, like when I became a teenager, and they just, once you become a male teenager, they start focusing more on you. Then it became more like of hating them, right? Like they're just always bothering me, and like they're giving us a bad name. And then there's a lot of associations between certain ethnicities and gangs, and then you feel like you get a bad rep because of them, and you can't dress the way you want because you might get confused and put yourself in danger for dressing a certain way, right? So there was all these things. So then it went from a place of fear of these modern day bandits, right, and to a place of like hating them and seeing them as like part of the one of the things that's hurting our community, hurting our society, especially making our ethnicity identified as Mexican American or Latino American, making us look bad, feeling a lot of resentment towards them. And this continued for some time. So yeah, I definitely didn't have any idea of working with gang members, as a Buddhist monk. But some many times when I just went on alms round or just walking around, or when I was going to school, or I would just catch myself either on the train, on the bus, or in many different places, kind of interacting with them. Some of the interactions were very sweet, actually, and tender, and some very beautiful experiences. And some of them were some of the same old things that happened before, right? But I have a different perspective, a different relationship to those situations and to those people, right? Regardless of what they did, my view and the way I deal with those situations is completely different. So I want to share this with you because in the Angulimala Sutta we're going to see one of the kings who starts from a place of fear, and basically the whole society is scared of Angulimala, this bandit who's harassing all these travelers and even killing them, according to the sutta. And that turning to a place of different perspective, right? Once it becomes a monk, people having a different perspective about him, and even honoring him, right? And worshiping him and offering him all these things and supporting him in his change. And even Angulimala coming to this new understanding about himself too, right? Seeing himself in a different way. So I want to share with you that, and then I'll share with you maybe one or two stories about how I, much like this king, have had to kind of change my perspective in the way I deal with difficult people like this, and dealing with my own past, fears and hatred of this category of people, just because of all the violence and all the pain and suffering that has been brought about, in connection with this group of people. So we're going to be looking at the Majjhima Nikaya, number 86, called Angulimala Sutta. So you can look it up, if on Sutta Central or Access to Insight, or you can open up, if you have your suttas there with you, I'm copying the Majjhima Nikaya in person. Go ahead and open it up right now to Majjhima Nikaya number 86. So Angulimala. And it starts like this. Thus I have heard, on one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove in Anathapindika's park. Now on that occasion, there was a bandit in the realm of King Pasenadi of Kosala, called Angulimala, or Finger Garland, who was murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, and merciless to all living beings. Villages, towns, and districts were being laid waste by him. He was constantly murdering people, and he wore fingers as a garland. Then, when it was morning, the Blessed One dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, he went into Savatthi for alms. When he had wandered for alms in Savatthi and had returned from his alms round after his meal, he set his resting place in order, and taking his bowl and outer robe, he set out by the road to where Angulimala was. Cowherds, shepherds, and plowmen, passing by him, taking the road to where Angulimala was, when they saw him, they said, "Do not take the road, monk. On that road is the bandit Angulimala, who is murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, and merciless to all beings. Villages and towns and districts are being laid waste by him. He is constantly murdering people, and he wears fingers as garlands. Men have come along this road in groups of 10, 20, 30, 40 from time to time, but still they have fallen into Angulimala's hands." When this was said, the Blessed One went on in silence. A second time, a third time, the cowherds, shepherds, and plowmen passing by him said the same thing. Still the Blessed One went on in silence. The bandit Angulimala saw the Blessed One coming in the distance. When he saw him, he thought, "It is wonderful, it is marvelous. Men have come along this road in groups of 10, 20, 30, and even 40 from time to time, but still they have fallen into my hands. And now this monk comes along, unaccompanied. One would fancy he had been fated to come. Why should I not take this monk's life?" Angulimala took up his sword and shield and buckled on his bow and quiver, and he followed behind the Blessed One. Then the Blessed One performed such a feat of supernormal success that the bandit Angulimala, going as fast as he could, was unable to catch up to the Blessed One, who was walking at his normal pace. Then he thought, It is wonderful. It is marvelous. Formerly, I caught up even with a galloping elephant and seized it. I caught up even with a galloping horse and seized it. I caught up even with a galloping chariot and seized it. I caught up even with a galloping deer and seized it. But yet, though I am going as fast as I can, I am unable to catch up with this monk, who is walking at his normal pace. He stopped and called, "Stop, monk! Stop, monk!" "I have stopped, Angulimala. Do you stop too?" Then the bandit Angulimala thought, "These monks, sons of the Sakyans, speak truth, assert truth. But though this monk is walking, yet he says, 'I have stopped.' Angulimala, do you stop too? Suppose I question this monk." Then he asked the Blessed One in stanzas thus: "While you are walking, monk, you tell me you have stopped. But now, when I have stopped, you say I have not stopped. I ask you now, O monk, what is the meaning of it? How is it you have stopped and I have not?" Angulimala, I have stopped forever, for swearing violence to every living being. But you have no restraint toward things that breathe. So that is why I have stopped and you have not. Oh, at long last, a sage revered by me, this monk has now appeared in the great forest. Indeed, I will for long renounce all evil, hearing your stanza, showing the dhamma. So saying, the bandit took his sword and weapons and flung them in a gaping chasm pit. The bandit worshipped the Sublime One's feet and then there asked for the going forth. The Enlightened One, the sage of great compassion, the teacher of the world with all its gods, addressed him with these words, "Come, bhikkhu." And that was how he became a bhikkhu. Then the Blessed One set out to wander by stages, back to Savatthi with Angulimala as his attendant. Monk, and eventually he arrived at Savatthi. Then the Blessed One stayed in Savatthi in Jedis Grove in Anathapindika's park. Now on that occasion, great crowds of people were gathering at the gates of King Pasenadi's inner palace, very clamorous and noisy, crying, "Sire, there is a bandit called Angulimala in your realm. He is murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, merciless to all living beings. Villages, towns, and districts are being laid waste by him. He is constantly murdering people, and he wears their fingers as garlands. The king must put him down." Then in broad day, King Pasenadi of Kosala drove out with a bodyguard of 500 horses for the park. He went as far as the road was passable for carriages, and then he dismounted from his carriages and went to the Blessed One on foot. After paying homage to him, he sat down to one side. When he had done so, the Blessed One said to him, "What is it, great king? Is Seniya Bimbisara, king of Magadha, attacking you, or the Lichavis of Vesali, or another hostile king?" "Venerable sir, Seniya Bimbisara, king of Magadha, is not attacking me, nor the Lichavis of Vesali, nor other hostile kings. But there is a bandit in my realm called Angulimala, who is murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, and merciless to all living beings. Villages and towns and districts are being laid waste by him. He is constantly murdering people, and he wears his fingers as garlands. I shall never be able to put him down, venerable sir." "Great king, if you saw that Angulimala had shaven off his hair and beard, put on the yellow cloth, and gone forth from the home life into homelessness, and that he had abstained from killing living beings, from taking what is not given, from false speech, and eating only one half of the day, he was living the life divine in virtue and good dhamma. If you saw him thus, how would you treat him?" "Venerable sir, we would pay homage. We would rise up for him. We should invite him to be seated, or we should invite him to accept robes, alms food, resting place, and requisites of medicine as a cure for the sick. Or we should arrange for his guarding in accordance with the Dhamma, and his defense and protection. But venerable sir, he is an evildoer, one of evil qualities. How could he have such virtue and restraint?" Now on that occasion, the venerable Angulimala was sitting not far from the Blessed One, who extended his right arm, saying to King Pasenadi of Kosala, "Great king, this is Angulimala." Then King Pasenadi was alarmed and fearful, and his hair stood to an end. Knowing this, the Blessed One told him, "Do not be afraid, great king. Do not be afraid. There is nothing for you to fear." Then the king's alarm and fear and horror was allayed. He went over to the Venerable Angulimala and said, "Venerable sir, Angulimala was a noble lord, was he not?" "Yes, great king." "Venerable sir, of what family was the noble lord's father? Of what family was his mother?" "My father was Gaga, great king. My mother was Mantani." "Let the noble Lord Gaga Mataniputta rest content. I shall take care of robes and alms food, resting place and requisites of medicine as cure for the sick, for the noble Lord Gaga Mataniputta." Now on that occasion, the Venerable Angulimala was a forest dweller, an alms food eater, a refused rag wearer, restricting himself to 3 robes. He replied, "Enough, great king. My triple robe is complete." Then King Pasenadi then returned to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat at one side. When he had done so, he said, "It is wonderful, Venerable Sir. It is marvelous how the Blessed One subdues the unsubdued, quiets the unquieted, brings about extinguishment in the unextinguished. One whom we, Venerable Sir, could not subdue with punishments and weapons, the Blessed One has subdued without punishment or weapons. And now, Venerable Sir, we depart. We are busy, and we have much to do." "It is time now, great king. Do as you think fit." Then King Pasenadi of Kosala rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, keeping him on his right, he departed. Then, when it was morning, the Venerable Angulimala dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, he went into Savatthi for alms. He was wandering for alms from house to house in Savatthi. He saw a certain woman in a travail with a deformed child. When he saw this, he thought, what defilement beings suffer. Indeed, that defilement beings suffer. When he had wandered for alms in Savatthi and had returned for alms round after the meal, he went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat to one side. And when he had done so, he said, "Venerable Sir, when it was morning, I dressed, and taking bowl and outer robe, I went into Savatthi for alms. As I wandered for alms from house to house in Savatthi, I saw a certain woman in a travail with a deformed child. When I saw that, I thought, what defilement beings suffer. Indeed, what defilement beings suffer. In that case, Angulimala, go into Savatthi and say to that woman, 'Sister, since I was born, I have never purposely derived a living being of life. By that truth, may you and your infant have peace.' Venerable Sir, should I not be speaking falsehoods in full awareness? For many living beings have been purposely derived of life by me." Then Angulimala, going to Savatthi and say to the woman, "Sister, since I was born with the noble birth, I have never purposely derived a living being of life. By that truth, may you and your infant have peace." "Yes, Venerable Sir," he replied, and went into Savatthi and told the woman, "Sister, since I was born with a noble birth, I have never purposely derived a living being of life. By this truth, may you and your infant have peace." And the woman and the infant had peace. Then, dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent, and self-controlled, the Venerable Angulimala, by realizing himself here and now, entered upon and abode in the supreme goal of the life divine, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the home life into homelessness. He knew directly, birth is exhausted. The life divine has been lived out. What has to be done is done. There is no more of this to come. And the Venerable Angulimala became an Arahant, one of the Arahants. Then it was morning. The Venerable Angulimala dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, he went into Savatthi for alms. On that occasion, a clod thrown by someone fell on the Venerable Angulimala's body, and a stick thrown by someone fell on his body, and a potsherd thrown by someone fell on his body. Then, with blood running from his broken head, with his bowl broken, and with his outer cloak of patches torn, the Venerable Angulimala went to the Blessed One. The Blessed One saw him coming, and he told him, "Bear it, Divine One, bear it, Divine One, bear it. You have experienced here and now the ripening of Kamma, whose ripening you might have experienced in hell over many a year, many a century, many a millennium. Then, while the Venerable Angulimala was alone in retreat, experiencing the pleasure of deliverance, he uttered this exclamation: "Who once did live in recklessness, and then is recklessness nevermore? He shall illuminate the world like the full moon unveiled by cloud. Who checks with profitable deeds the evil kammas he has done, he shall illuminate the world like the full moon unveiled by cloud. Who as a youthful bhikkhu shows devotion to the Buddha's law, he shall illuminate the world like the full moon unveiled by cloud. Oh, let my enemies hear discourses on the law. Oh, let my enemies follow the Buddha's teachings. Oh, let my enemies wait on such kind of men as serve the law because they are at peace. Oh, let my enemies give ear from time to time and hear the law as told by men who preach forbearance, by men who speak as well in praise of loving kindness, and suit the while their actions to their words. For surely then they would not wish to harm me. They would not think of harming other beings. So those who would protect all beings, frail or bold, let them attain the all-surpassing peace. Conduit makers guide the water. Fletchers straighten out the arrows. Joiners straighten out the timber. Wise men seek, tame themselves. There are some that tame with beatings, some with goads, and some with lashes. One has neither rod nor weapon. I am tamed by such as he. Innocent in the name I bear, who was obnoxious in the past, the name I bear today is true. I hurt not any one at all. And though I lived once as a bandit with the name of Finger Garland, Angulimala, and whom the great flood swept along, I went for refuge to the Buddha. And though I once was bloody-handed with the name of Finger Garland, I see the refuge I have found. What leads to rebirth is no more. Whilst I did many deeds that promised birth in unhappy destinations, yet their results have reached me now, and so I eat no more in depth. And oh, they are fools and have no wits, who give themselves to recklessness. But men of sense guard diligence and treat it as their greatest good. Oh, give no way to recklessness, nor harbor love of sense desires, but diligently meditate, so as to reach the perfect bliss. So welcome to that choice of mind, and let it stand. 'Twas not ill made. The best I know is this alone. Of all the laws made known to men, so welcome to that choice of mine, and let it stand. 'Twas not ill made. With the three true knowledges gained, all that the Buddha ordained is done. So that's the end of that Angulimala Sutta. I know it's a little bit long, right? You had to hear for some time me reading the sutta. So now I would like to share just some of my experiences. So when I was going to grad school about 3 years ago, I had to meet for like a study group. And it wasn't where we usually meet. It was at a different place. It was actually in South LA, formerly known as South Central. So it's probably not one of the safest neighborhoods in Los Angeles. So I kind of got lost because I usually don't go down there, and I usually don't take that train. It was the Blue Line, and I got off at this stop. Probably one of the more sketchy of the stops. There was like a big homeless encampment there, and then there's like a liquor store down the street. So it was kind of sketchy, and I got lost, and I wasn't gonna walk. So then I had some extra Uber credits that were given to me, so I used that to take the rest of the thing instead of taking a bus or walking to where we're gonna meet for the study group. And while I was there waiting, the train station's between like this industrial place on one side, And the other side is just like a bunch of houses, kind of like a suburb. And from one of these streets where the houses are at, this young man, like a teenager or a young adult, comes running, right? And then he sees me, and I see him, and he's dressed like a typical, Latino gang member from Southern California, very stereotypical. And then he's running towards me, and at the same time that he's running towards me, I just hear sirens, and then I'm like, okay, something's going on here. But I just stay there waiting at the train station where the passenger pickup is for the Uber to come pick me up. So I'm just there, and he doesn't lose sight of me, right? Like, he locks onto me, and he stops running, and he starts walking, and he walks right up towards me. And I forget exactly what he said, but he's like, oh, you're like some religious person, right? You're like a priest or a monk. I said, oh, yes, that's what I am. I'm a Buddhist monk. He's like, oh, what are you doing here? I said, oh, I came to meet some of my friends here to study. But I'm kind of lost, and so I'm waiting for an Uber to come. And he's like, can I talk to you? And I was like, yeah, let's talk. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm kind of like paraphrasing here of what happened, because we ended up talking for a long time because the Uber's late. It couldn't find where I was at, or maybe no one wanted to pick up no one wanted to pick up that my ride because it was in such a place that maybe there isn't so many cars there. But he just started telling me, like asking questions about Buddhism and what's going on. And then I looked at his hand, and his knuckles were ripped and they were bleeding. And when I saw that, he's like, oh yeah, I got into a fight. I was at home right now, and I got into a fight with my family members, and they called the police. And those were probably the sirens that you heard. They went to my house, and the police probably went there. And then he started telling me about how he had other run-ins with the law, and about some of the other things that he had done. And then he started getting like really sad, and he goes, I fight a lot with my family because I love them and I care about them. And when I see them or suspect that they're doing foolish things or dumb things, I don't know how to control myself. So then we get into arguments, and it leads to physical fights. And I saw his eyes kind of like tearing up, and he was getting really sad. And he's like, I don't even know what to do anymore. I don't feel like I have anything going for me in this life. So I just listened to him, right? I just let him kind of just like express himself. And then after some time of just like standing there with him and him just going through all these things, he kind of pauses, and he's like, can I tell you something else? And I'm like, yes, go ahead. And then he said, what can I do if I've killed someone? So I just kind of stayed quiet, right? Let that sink in, him telling me that he had killed someone. And I told him, we shouldn't focus too much on the past. Something like this, I'm paraphrasing, we can't change it. But right now, and in the future, you can change things and you can be different. So, just whatever you can do from now on to be different and not do those types of things again in the future, that's what you should focus on. Just really focus on what you can do now and how you can do things differently in the future. And then he's like, oh man, he changed. Like, he became like very happy, or maybe he, felt very uncomfortable and wanted to change the subject after that. And he's like, we need more people like you. Like, he tapped my back like this, and then he like shook my hand, and like, we're homies and all of that. And then he's like, hey, where's your Uber? Because we've been talking for 10 minutes. And I was like, yeah, that's a good question. And I had forgot to look at my phone, and finally someone picked it up, and they were coming. And he's like, you know what? I'll stay here with you because it's not a safe place. And I said, well, where are you going? He's like, I have nowhere to stay. He's like, I think I'm just going to go to Venice Beach and spend the night at the beach and sleep there. I'm like, how are you going to get there? He's like, well, I'm going to take the bus. The train into the bus. And then I said, do you have a pass? A train pass? He's like, no, I'm just going to get on there. And he laughed, like illegally. And I said, you know what? You don't need any more problems. So then I gave him, because I had 2 bus passes. So I gave him one of my bus passes. Like, here you go. You don't need any more problems today. And he's like, oh, thank you so much. how can I learn more? And I just, give him my Facebook information and stuff like that so he can look me up. And he was so happy. Then finally the Uber did show up, more than 10 minutes later, and picked me up. And then I took off, and he, again, kind of gave me like a pat on the back and shook my hand and said bye-bye. And I saw him go up into the train station and take off. But I went from this kind of place like king, the king of Kosala Pasenadi, right? From this place of kind of like hesitance when I saw him running towards me, walking towards me, staring at me, hearing the sirens, and right, I was kind of hesitant, like, oh, what's going to happen here? To this place of like, oh wow, this person has gone through a lot after they shared their experience with me, right? Feeling this kind of connection with him, kind of like the king also had towards Angulimala once that he saw that he had changed his ways. And with all of the history that I had and all my filters and lenses that I see the world through, growing up in that environment and knowing about the real dangers, right? Not only of gang members pose, but in the neighborhoods that I'm in, the dangers that can happen in those neighborhoods, what's happened to my family, to my friends. There's a lot of filtering in my experience when it comes to these situations, right? They kind of might close me off to certain people or certain communities. But thanks to the practice of the Dhamma, I've been able to kind of, move some of those filters away and clear up my vision, clear up my perception and perspectives, and try to see everyone, equally, right? Regardless of what they've done, and not, make someone like narrow them down or put them in this little box, right? Of like, oh, they're a gang member, oh, they're a criminal, oh, they're a bad person, or here even they're a murderer, right? It's like a person who has murdered at some point, a person who has done something bad, a person who has committed a crime at some point, but not making them essentially a murderer at their core, right? At their essence, that's what they are. They're a murderer. Like, no, they're a person who has murdered, right? It's a very different thing. Instead of putting them into that kind of limiting point of view where, of course, if you see someone as a murderer, you're always going to be scared or you're going to want to punish them. But if we kind of put that to the side, right, and just see it as one dimension of who they are, then it's a lot easier to engage with them and be able to let go of our fear or hesitation or hatred or whatever we have, whatever is not letting us connect with that person and see that person as they are. But not all my encounters have been that beautiful as a gang with gang members. Another time when I was going to school, I got on the bus. Actually, there used to be a bus that passed right in front of the temple, but after COVID, they took it away. They closed that line. I jumped on the bus, and as soon as I jumped on the bus, again, this kind of stereotypical Latino gang member was already on the bus, and he comes up to me. I'm sitting down, usually like in the front seats that are reserved for like older people or handicapped people, but you can sit there if there's no person that needs those seats. I sat down there, and he just comes up to me, stands right in front of me, and he goes, "Hey, are you like a Thai monk?" And I said, "No, I'm not a Thai monk, but I'm a Buddhist monk." He goes, "Oh, so you are a monk?" And I said, "Yes." And I was just kind of I'm happy to like engage with people when people come up to me and they're curious. So I'm always like smiling and trying to be very nice and kind and kind of enthusiastic when I speak to people. But he had kind of a serious face. And then he goes, "Oh, you know what? Last week I saw this Thai monk and I beat him up, and I just want to let you know." And then he said the name of his gang, and you need to be careful, something. And then he kind of walked away, and he was just staring at me. But for some reason, like my mind didn't understand what was going on, right? And I was like, "Okay, thank you." I think I did say thank you or something like that. And I just kind of stayed there, kind of very naive about what's going on in the situation. And then as I was sitting there, I kept felt him stare at me, and I was like, "What's going on with this guy? Why is he staring at me?" And then it dawned to me what he had said. And I was like, "Oh, wow, he just told me that he beat up a monk the other day." I was like, "That's not good. I got to be careful now. I don't know what this guy's going to do." And he just kept staring at me. Luckily enough, 2 stops later, he got off. But before he got off, he told me the name of his gang too. And he says that I better watch out, right? And be careful. And then he got off. But even before I became a monk, I made it my habit to, every time I leave the temple, or even every time I left my house, I would go to the gym or whatever I was doing as a layperson, and even now as a monk, to purposely, bring to mind the Brahmaviharas, loving kindness, compassion, um, joy, and equanimity all the time. And especially when I was sitting on the bus, I would always just practicing metta all the time. Because I figured when I practice metta, for some reason, I noticed that people don't usually sit around me. So it's something protective about metta. You think metta would be warm and people would feel safe and sit around me. But for some reason, I think it had the opposite effect on the bus. I learned that as a layperson when I would practice metta. So that's a good way to not get weird people sitting next to you. So that's why I practice metta. uh, and then, but I think that same metta, right, had me like, didn't even let the anger or the threat that person was trying to direct at me. I couldn't even receive it. Like, my mind wouldn't entertain that thought. It wasn't accepting what he was trying to communicate. Right. That's how, to the degree that I have practiced for so many years. I mean, I'm talking already about 6 years of practice at least, where this person is showing me anger in their face and their body, the sound of their voice, the words that they're communicating, right, are not nice, right? They're kind of like violent and aggressive and cruel. But my mind is like, no, no, thank you. That's not for me. Kind of like when the person that insulted the Buddha, right? And the Buddha says, if you give a gift and the person doesn't accept it, who does the gift belong to? And the person goes, oh, it's mine because I was the one who offered it. And in the same way, he goes, I don't accept your words. Whatever you said to me, that belongs to you. So I saw this kind of happen in my own life with this gang member that we say hit me up. That's what we call it when they hit you up, or threatened me on the bus, where my mind wouldn't even accept it. Like, I don't take those things, those gifts. That's not the currency that I accept here. That's all you. You can keep that for yourself, but in a very kind of automatic way where I didn't have to do anything. It was just organic. I was just already in that set because I was always used to, when I leave the temple, I practice that. When I'm on the bus, especially, I make an effort to practice that. But you know what? I didn't hate him. I didn't get upset with him, right? I didn't, I had no ill will towards him. Like, even after he left and I realized that the gravity of the situation, that I was probably in danger at that time if things would have gone wrong, I didn't feel bad. Like, there was no more fear like I would have had in the past, before I was a monk or when I was growing up as a young man in Los Angeles. Or there wasn't this like, how could he do this to me? He's such a bad guy. There wasn't that anger towards him. And I think those are some of the benefits of the practice of constantly developing the Brahmaviharas. At times it can feel a little fake, right? When you're just sitting there, may I be well, may I be peaceful, may I be well, may I be happy, may all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. Like, it seems kind of like it's not doing anything, right? But it's like these little drops, right? These little drops of loving kindness and compassion that are just accumulating over time. And when you look at your big jug of loving kindness and compassion, it seems like you're not making any progress at all. But I assure you that over a long time, maybe years, you'll see that it starts adding up. Kind of like when you're also like a child and a teenager, right? You're getting taller, you're getting bigger. You don't realize it. But then after some months, 6 months or a year, you notice that your shirt doesn't fit you anymore. Your shoes don't fit you anymore. You're taller. And then when you meet your aunties or your relatives that you haven't seen for some time, they start telling you, oh, wow, you're so big now. Oh, you've grown, right? Or your face has changed. Your voice has changed. All these changes are very apparent to others, but maybe not to oneself because the changes are so gradual. So in a similar way, when we practice loving kindness and compassion and all the other Brahmaviharas, it's just drop by drop, right? It's getting filled and our mind begins to change, right? It's not only that we're starting to feel different, right? The sense of loving kindness and compassion and concern for others, but even our perception, right? Our perception that and the categories that we have for things in the world also begin to change, right? So basically there's a complete change of our reality. We start living within a different lens of reality. And when you encounter the same situations in the past that would have caused fear or hatred, they are reduced, or maybe you don't even perceive them the same way anymore. Sometimes you might even perceive it from like a sense of like, oh, it's so sad that this person is so angry. It's so sad that this person, always wants to resolve their problems through violence. It's so sad that this person is part of a group, that does all this criminal activity, hurts themselves and hurts others. and they must have a very difficult life to end up in this situation. We kind of get a radical shift in our perception of reality and how we interact with the world. So these are just a few occasions. I've had other occasions, very beautiful occasions, walking down the street too, where these gang members have revealed kind of very interesting things about themselves. I've even had one time where a gang member ran into the temple when he was running away from the police, and the police helicopter was going around the neighborhood, and I had to kind of bring in all the Sri Lankan devotees inside, and they never found him. But at that time, I felt like, wow, this gang member, he thought, where is a safe place for me? Instead of going to his home or going to his friends, that's the gang's neighborhood. He has so many places to hide. He thought, oh, I feel safe in the temple. And that just made me feel like a lot of metta and compassion for him. Like even this person, right, who people would consider a bad person, or like the king did, or a violent person, even they recognize what's good. And they can see in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, they can see in the Vihara that it's a good place where they can be safe. And he was actually hiding under the Bodhi tree, I think because there's a place where the helicopter can't see him, right? He's hiding under the tree. But it was just such a nice, I just felt such a nice sentiment knowing that out of all the places that he could hide, he came to hide at the temple that he trusts. He feels like this is a safe place, that it's a refuge for him, regardless of whatever is going on in his life, that he wouldn't feel judged or kicked out. And we saw him, and we didn't kick him out. We didn't say anything. So he still carried that with him after that, right? All those monks didn't kick me out. They didn't, do anything harmful towards me. They kind of let me chill out there for the moment. So these are just a few things that I kind of want to connect to this kind of perspective when we face these kind of people that we may have biases towards, maybe even based, like very rational fears, right? And biases towards, because yes, we don't want to be close to people who are committing criminal acts or being violent. It's very dangerous. We want to kind of stay away. But at the same time, we don't want to pigeonhole them, right? And keep them in this narrow box where we separate them from ourselves, right? And when we practice loving kindness, it's like loving kindness for all these people, except for those, like not those people, right? Not those gang members, not this ethnicity, not this race, not this religion, not this political party, etc. Right? We kind of, those difficult people, we tend to try to go around them. But there's really a beautiful place for us to practice and to learn gradually, right? And please don't put yourself in the situations that I put myself in. Don't try to test yourself. Don't do that, right? If you end up in these situations, hopefully your practice can help you navigate these situations. By no means am I endorsing people to go out there into these gang neighborhoods and interact with gang members just because you want to be a good Buddhist or you want to practice loving kindness. No, please avoid it. It's things might not work out. Most likely things will not work out as well. So please don't do that. I see some things in the chat now. So I'm going to move into the Q&A part of this talk. Okay, let's see. A lot of hellos. Anjalis. Madeline Parsons says, I love this sutta. Its message of redemption is so heartening. Yes, sadhu, sadhu. Sud says, Dear Bhante, even gang members have parents. They have also started off as innocent babies who do not harm. What do you think of the fetters? Are specifically in terms of people who commit crimes. Fetters as in terms of what Buddha might have mentioned in the suttas. Okay, so I'll share this. I'll put this on the screen, what Sud said. So I think there's two things here that we can think about. One is that we all have the underlying tendency towards greed, hatred, and delusion, right? So there's that wanting to covet things and take things, right? Like even by illegal means, like gangs often rob or break into homes and do things like that, or extort people, right? They're taking things that were not freely given, or since they commit violence or they sell drugs, they do all these things, right, to kind of gain power and prestige and money. Well, all of us too, right? We have that same tendency. It's all of us to some extent. And in the same way that all of us have the underlying tendency for anger and cruelty and violence, they also do too, right? And these two things kind of come together, right? For them, they're in such an environment where the causes and conditions nourish and feed, right? Provide nutriment to these underlying tendencies. they're being fed, and that's what kind of perpetuates and makes these tendencies come up more and more and more, and these patterns, right, to become stronger and stronger and stronger, until when these patterns become their dominant ways of interacting with the world, right? So I don't really see that they have any specific fetters, right? That any of us do. Like, it's not like they have some different fetters or anything. I think we're all the same. We're all in the same boat, but it's just that their particular environment, right, kind of channels certain dimensions of those fetters or underlying tendencies or defilements to come up more, right? Because it's more efficient. It's a more efficient environment for those things to come up. And then me growing up, with a lot of gang members that are friends in a gang environment and family members, you see how there's two different people. There's the person who they are with their mom and their dad, right, and their kids, because a lot of gang members, they have families too, their children, and then you see who they are, like, with their friends, the other gang members, with police officers, or with the people that they exploit and attack and abuse, and it's like two different people, and you get to see both the wholesome, right, qualities that the person has and the unwholesome ones, and you see how they're able to kind of like switch depending on which environment they're in. So that kind of gives you a different a perspective of who they are. Usually when we watch the news or other things or movies, we only get one dimension, right? We see one facet of it. We only see one side of it. We don't see the other side of who they are, in their own home, and who they are with their own friends and family. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that. And then there's another question over here. I think Nico says, with women and baby, what was the distinction between the two ways of saying to the mother, I don't recall having the intention of taking life of a living creature, in one who was a deliberate lie and was not having no ill will in the mind? Was that the way you practice the Brahma? Okay, so the distinction is that one was referring to when he was actually born, and another one when he became a monk, right? So first, the Buddha said, go over there and tell her that you haven't killed any living being since you were born. And Angulimala says, I can't say that, right? I've killed many beings. That would be a deliberate lie. And the Buddha goes, okay, since you've had your noble birth, right? So since you came into the Sangha, you can say that you haven't deliberately killed any living being, because that would be a truth, right? Since you were reborn. So then he went and said that. So the difference is that, right? From the moment that he stopped killing, from that time till now, he hasn't killed. So by the power of this truth, right, of that time period, may they be well. And if he would have said it the other way, it would have been a lie. So that's the distinction. And what's interesting about this is that, at least in Sri Lanka, women, when they're like in their 9th or 8th month, go to the temple or have the monks come to them and do the Angulimala chanting for them, for the well-being of their baby. So now Angulimala went from this figure of taking life to a life giver or life preserver, right? So we see how this kind of shift happened within how people view Angulimala. It's such a beautiful thing. It often happens at our temple or in other Sri Lankan communities. I don't know if but does it happen in Thailand? Do they also do the Angulimala Sutta? No? There's some comments here. Captain Metta, blessings. Michael says, thank you, Nico, for asking what was going on. Oh, some people, it wasn't clear to them what happened with Angulimala when he said that by the power of this truth. Okay. Now Richard says, thank you for such an insightful talk and great illustration of metta and compassion for all living beings. I'm very familiar with the LA gang culture, and your stories were an accurate reflection of it. Oh, okay. Thank you. Nico, it's powerful that the Buddha told him, endure it, Brahmin, regarding how people treat him. I reflect on how to endure kamma. Yes, and that's also because he was an arahant already, right? So he was an arahant. He had no reason to feel any certain way about it, right? He was blameless. He wasn't creating any new karma, whether good or bad. And then also reflecting on, like, right, how the results of it are different, right? If he hadn't followed the Buddhist path, he would have gone to hell, and he would have experienced severe, tortures as outlined in the suttas. But now, instead of going to hell and being there for however long, all he had to do was just kind of get things thrown at him, right, and get his robe ripped. So if you had a choice between, burning in hell or being tortured in hell, all those crazy, like in the King Yama Sutta, like all those crazy things that happen, or people are just throwing random objects at you, I think most people would choose the random objects instead of getting tortured in hell. Okay, so if there's any more questions, then we can end for today. So if you're just typing, I'll just wait a few more seconds. If not, then I think that's good for today. Oh yeah, and this is my last talk here for the foreseeable future. I'm leaving tomorrow, so it was so nice to be with all of you here online. The last 5 Fridays, right? The last 5 Fridays talking about the Peta Batu, and then also seeing you for Monks Chat. I think I joined all the Monks Chat while I was here, so that's like 5 Monks Chat also that I was here with you, and then doing this here today for all of you. So nice. Hopefully, I'll probably be back sometime next year, or if not, you might see me just like doing some of the online activities like IAB does, and the other monks around the world who sometimes come from time to time and share Dhamma from their own temple. Okay, real quick right here. Question: Ajabram says that there is no free will, but there is free won't, or the ability to restrain. Angulimala was taught, but isn't free won't also conditioned? Like free, I don't even like using free will. That's a Western idea. I don't know of anything like that called in Buddhism free will. So sometimes when we try to, it's like when you're a kid and you're playing with the box that has all the shapes, and then you have to put the right shape in it, like a square to a square, then it fits in. Well, if we try to use free will, that's like trying to put the triangle in a square, right? So the Buddhist perspective is one way, and sometimes the concepts and ideas from another culture don't exactly fit. Right, so all we can talk about is Chetana, right? Some people think about Chetana as free will or not free will, whatever that is. But yes, everything's conditioned, but not everything is completely deterministic, right? But there's a chance, right, for things to be different. And also, I don't like to use free will because it implies that there's an entity that is choosing, and we know that there's no entity, right? So in order to we need to abandon our own, we need to let go of these questions because the questions don't fit kind of the Buddhist way of thinking, and come up with a new question that is better suited for the Buddhist worldview. Because if not, things are not going to match. You're still going to keep trying to squeeze that triangle into that square, and it's not going to work. Or you're just going to get frustrated. You'll never get a good answer. Where were you chanting on the bus? Oh, and in Los Angeles on the metro bus, on the seats. I just sit there. I don't chant out loud because that, people might think I have a problem. In LA, a lot of people talking to themselves on the bus. So I just chant in my mind. Thank you to everyone for all the stolen car, observing surroundings. Okay. Bhante, my daughter is working in Buffalo Summer, and her first week, her car got stolen. She's really struggling with observing the surroundings there. How can I help her? Okay. So just practicing awareness, right? When we practice awareness, if we're mindful, it's not only being mindful internally, but we can also be mindful externally, and then also cultivating loving kindness and compassion. So whatever happened to us in the past isn't kind of obscuring the way we see the world now. And then also realizing that none of us are ever going to be free from being hurt and being abused. This is something that happens to everyone, kind of like Kisa Gotami, who lost her son, right? Her baby. It's not only her that lost her son. It's not only your daughter that got her car stolen, right? Many people have gotten their car stolen or broken into. So I think to kind of protect us, if we practice mindfulness and the Brahmaviharas, it's a good way to interact with the world. So we're always alert, and we're always kind of putting on these good vibes that will help us interact with the world in a skillful way. But then at the same time, reflecting on dukkha and seeing the reality of it, that no one is going to be free from difficult times or difficult things happening to them. That's the reality of it. It's just, when is it going to happen, right? It's going to happen at some point. And coming to terms with it, just like sickness, we're all going to get sick. We're all going to get old. We're all going to die. And at some point, some crime will be committed against us, most likely. Statistically, the probability is very high. More likely so than not. And kind of coming to terms with that too, right? Because sometimes we're so sheltered. And the first time that we come across something, we don't believe, how could it happen to me, right? How could someone do that to me? That could never happen to me. We feel that we're special, right? Maybe because we're so privileged to live in a nice place, but actually that's just normal. That's the way things are. So breaking away from this kind of privileged little kind of box that we lived in, maybe, or unrealistic worldview that we had about how things are, and kind of having a more realistic worldview without becoming jaded about how the world is, right? And things like that. Okay, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for all the questions. Thank you for all the anjalis and hellos and all those kind of things. That's it for today, and may you be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful.
Say one thing.
Yes. Yes, Ajahn.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Wonderful talk and great sutra reading. And thank you so much for the live stream session. It was really wonderful. Your personal stories, very, very illustrative, I think. I was going to say, since Bhante Sanathavihari is leaving tomorrow in the afternoon, hope people who would like to come in and say goodbye to Bhante, don't hesitate to come maybe for the meal offering or at the 5 o'clock tea. We have with conversation this evening, the meal offering today and tomorrow. Meal proceedings start at 11, so if you want to come in and see him off, your opportunity, since he's going to be away at least probably for a year or so. So there you go.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Bhante.
It's been a wonderful addition to the community. It's been really a pleasure living with him here, and he's contributed so much.
Thank you, Bhante. Yes, so if you like, you're welcome to come during the appropriate times, like Ajahn mentioned. And thank you so much. And until next time, whenever that may be, may you be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. Sukhi hotu. Bye-bye.